Hi again, everyone. Gary Digital Williams here on Beltway Boxing News and Notes on the Boxing on the Beltway Podcast Network. The Boxing on the Beltway Podcast Network can be heard on many different podcast platforms, including Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. We're on Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, TuneIn, and on Spotify. So you can hear the Beltway Boxing podcast anywhere you can possibly go. And, of course, once again, no in-the-ring news, but a lot of news outside the ring. And a couple of things we're going to touch on today. One thing we're going to touch on today as far as boxing is concerned is a major shakeup in the boxing journalism circles. And it happens to a guy who's a good friend of mine. And I'm really sad to hear this, but we're going to talk about that in just a moment. We're also going to take you back to truly one of the wildest days that I've ever spent on the Beltway boxing scene. And I've talked about it in bits and pieces, but I've never gone into the full story behind this night. And I want to talk about this a little bit, and that's going to be the feature part of our podcast today. And also we're going to talk about how in the world did World Wrestling Entertainment become listed as essential in the state of Florida. We'll talk about that on our podcast today. Beltway Boxing News and Notes on the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network, brought to you as always by real-time pain relief. From boxers to ballerinas, for shoulder pain to muscle strain, everything between, Boxing Law on the Beltway recommends real-time pain relief, the natural, plant-based, safe, fast, and effective ointment. Go to freepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of real-time pain relief. You get a free $10 tube of real-time pain relief, the official pain relief for the 2020 Daytona 500. That seems so long ago now. Unbelievable. Rub it on, the pain is gone in real time. And by DeborahSpears.com. She has great weight loss tips, great jewelry, and great training methods on Deborah, DEBRA Spears.com. Well, again, we had some major shakeup in the boxing journalism. And actually, this goes back a few months. And we kind of knew this was coming, but kind of hate to see it happen. One of my good friends in the journalism business, and boxing journalism business, and I think he's truly, if not the best boxing journalist in the country, he's definitely among the top three. I think he's not in the Hall of Fame yet, but I know he's gotten award from the Boxing Writers Association of America. But this man, and he's a local guy too. He lives in Virginia. His name, Dan Rafael. And Dan Rafael recently was, his contract at ESPN.com was not renewed. And for me, that's a shame. I mean, Dan and I can never say a bad word about Dan Rafael. And a lot of people apparently can, because probably a lot of folks he's not liked by a lot of folks in the boxing business. I don't know why. Be perfectly honest with you, I don't know why, but he's always been first class to me. He has consulted me at times when we talk about local boxers, especially those he didn't get a chance to see. But he and I have been friends since his days at USA Today, when he really totally revamped the boxing coverage on USA Today. That's when he started with the rankings and the top 10 and all the rankings in the different weight classes. He started that at USA Today and brought that over to ESPN, and he became an on-air personality on ESPN. Did a couple of color commentary fights as well. And I always consider him a good friend. He really was. I mean, I love when he would say when he had a fight here in the area, like in Virginia or in New York. I mean, sorry, in Maryland or in D.C. That was a home trip for him. That was home game for him, because he didn't have to go on the road. And apparently he did not like to fly. Never liked to fly. But good man. I like I said, I never can say a bad thing about him. He's helped me in many cases. With my thing, he's been very, very supportive of what I've done on Boxing on the Beltway, and really has honored me many times with his praise of Boxing on the Beltway. So, a lot of people have bad things to say about him, but you'll never hear a bad word from me about Dan Rafael. I hope he lands on his feet. I think he will land on his feet very soon. I mean, once the zone gets back into the mix again, he'll be back on there somewhere. And I think any newspaper in the country, they still want to cover boxing. That's the key, is they still want to cover boxing, because a lot of them don't now. It's just a shame. Not on a regular basis. But Dan made it must read when he was at USA Today. Boxing was must read at USA Today. And when he was on ESPN, of course, he did the chats every Friday, and that was a lot of fun. And like I said, I don't have anything bad to say about Dan Rafael. I have to repeat that because he was just a good man. He's a good man, and I really enjoy talking to him over the years, sitting next to him at ringside, as I have been a few times. He's a good guy, and I really do hope he gets back on his feet. I'm sure he will get back on his feet very, very soon. So Dan Rafael, once again, out at ESPN. He is his contract was not renewed. And again, it had nothing to do with what's going on now with the coronavirus. I think that was in the works for quite some time. I think ESPN is kind of cutting back anyway. And so that's a shame in and of itself. But therein lies the situation. So Dan Rafael, once again, out at ESPN.com. Now, main story today. I'll take you back to, again, truly one of the wildest days. To this day, is still one of the wildest days that I can remember in Beltway Boxing history. It was truly bizarre in all shapes and sizes. I'm gonna take this in three parts: the before, during, and after, because the aftermath of this is as strange as the actual event. Okay, now the story deals around a former world champion who was definitely on the downside of his career. But to have him here was a big move for us in D.C. at that time. This was October 22nd, 1994. I'm taking you back to October 22nd, 1994. And this was the night that Leon Spinks came to town. Now, before I get into it deeply, I want to say that I'm doing this in no way to make fun of Leon Spinks, especially in the situation he's going through right now. Apparently, he's dealing with cancer. He's not been in the best of health. So I'm taking the incident as it was. It just happened to be this way. And I pray for Leon Spinks' health and his well-being, because he's been fighting this for a little bit of time now, for what I hear. Okay? Now, as far as this night was concerned, before the night took place, back in August of 1994, and this time I was doing my TV show, Boxing Spotlight. And I think next week, what we're going to do is take a full look at Boxing Spotlight. I've mentioned that so many times here on the podcast, but I've never gotten into the history of this show and what it meant to me and how it helped me in my boxing career. And it's the genesis of the show itself. So I kind of want to get into that, and I'll probably do that next week on our podcast. So look for that as well. But we were doing our show, and at this time, the show was going great guns. It really was. We were all over the area doing local shows. And this particular night, when we heard about Leon Spinks being on as a main event on this show, we were excited on Boxing Spotlight. Now, you're looking at a boxer, Leon Spinks, who was a gold medalist, of course, in 1976. He was on perhaps the greatest American boxing team in history. That team that featured both Leon and his brother, Michael Spinks, who was also world champion. Of course, Sugar Ray Leonard was on that show, on that card, on that team, I should say. Howard Davis Jr., who was, I believe, the best boxer on the Olympic team. We had two other local boxers from the Washington area on the 76 team. Sergeant Charles Mooney, who was a silver medalist in the 1976 Olympics. And Louis Heidi Curtis was also a member of that team. So three boxers from the Beltway were on that 1976 Olympic team. Of course, there Leo Randolph, Howard Davis Jr., and the Spinks brothers, among others. And of course, in his 8th pro fight, just a year after he turned pro, Leon Spinks would win a 15-round split decision over Muhammad Ali on February 15, 1978 at the Hilton Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. That was amazing in and of itself. And of course, he would lose the title right back to Ali on September 15th of the same year at the Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana by 15-round unanimous decision. But to have someone with those credentials, it was just great. And it didn't end, although we knew going into the bout that he was definitely not the same Leon Spinks that we have been watching for most of his career. You know, we go through his body of work. He lost to people like Dwight Muhammad Qawi. He lost to Carlos Sugar de Leon. He lost to Larry Holmes, of course, by third round TKO in June of 1981. The De Leon fight was in March of 1983, and the Dwight Muhammad Qawi bout was in March of 1986. He also lost to Randall Tex Cobb by majority decision in March of 1988. And so we knew he was not in the great shape that he once was. He had some tough times. So we didn't expect a whole lot from Leon Spinks, but we just got more than we bargained for. Let's put it that way. Now, Leon Spinks' opponent that day was a man by the name of John Carlo. Now, John Carlo is from the Bronx, New York, and we knew nothing about him, okay? And this played into the situation that took place during that time period. See, back in 1994, there was no box rec, and there was no federal ID as such. So a boxer can come into a town, and or a boxer could fight in the town, and they could lie about his record. They'll blatantly lie. For example, we had boxers back in those days that we always heard their record was like 8-6 or 7-5, and come to find out as we looked at his record years later, they may be 8-35, okay, something like that, or never even make 8 wins, okay. So that was the way boxing was at that time. You could lie, and John Carlo's record was announced record was 11-1 with 10 KOs. I'm going to get back to that in a moment because it's very important about the aftermath of this card. So, John Carlo was a last-minute sub for a guy by the name of Mark McChain, who was out of Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut. Apparently, McChain. Mark McChain is his name. And he was out of Hartford, Connecticut. He didn't fight on the card, and John Carlo took his place. So, Leon Spinks battles John Carlo. Bout was scheduled for 10 rounds. Now, this card itself was actually a very, very good card. A couple of other bouts on the card. The co-feature on the card, and I talked about his man last week on podcast, Gary Rock Payne. This is when Payne won the IBC middleweight championship in a 12-round decision win over Jeff Johnson. Jeff Johnson, I believe, was out of Atlanta, Georgia, and he was an excellent fighter, really was. And Payne was undefeated, and it was a great fight, it really was, really good fight, and probably without question the best fight on the card. Everything else was quick. Let me say that, quick. First of all, Shambe Mitchell. Now, Shambe Mitchell made his return to the D.C. area after losing back-to-back bouts. He was 21-0 before he lost 2 bouts back-to-back by knockout to Stevie Johnston and Levander Johnson. So he was making a return, kind of get himself back together again. He fought another grizzled veteran from this area named Lyndon Paul Walker, and he knocked Lyndon Paul Walker out in the second round on that card. Shambe Mitchell did. Also on the card, Darryl Terrible T. Tyson scored a first-round knockout over Fernando Ramos. Melvin Foster, heavyweight Melvin Foster, top gun out of Southeast, won a 6-round bout over Jimmy Harrison. I believe it was a knockout win for Melvin Foster. Jason Brown Sugar Brownlee. He was a boxer who didn't last very long, very popular boxer at the time he was in the boxing ring. Later became a choir director, maybe even a pastor in the Washington, D.C. area. I've seen him recently. He beat the debuting Clarence Powerhouse Powell of North Carolina. That was in the first round. Purcell Hard Rock Miller. He had a tough back that night. Purcell Hard Rock Miller. He knocked out Jazzy Jeff Kirksley of North Carolina. That was in the 4th round, and that was a tough fight for him. Kirkley, I should say, was very, very awkward, and it made Purcell work for that win. No question. That was only his second pro fight, too. Same with Jason Brownlee. He only had his second pro fight. And also Michael Himbad Duncan out of Washington, D.C. He would lose by disqualification to Elwin Mean Machine Kemp out of Washington, D.C. That was kind of an ugly fight there as well. So that was the card, and the main event would be Leon Spinks and John Carlo. Now, let's get to the fight itself. we knew things were going to be kind of weird because the guest ring announcer for that particular bout, because this Bobby Jones was the regular ring announcer, but the guest ring announcer for that bout was none other than the late mayor, and some would call the mayor for life of Washington, D.C., Marion Barry. Now, Marion Barry, to his credit, was a huge boxing fan. He was the one who helped engineer the Mayor's Cup here in Washington, D.C., the amateur boxing tournament, one of our premier amateur boxing tournaments in the boxing Washington, D.C. scene. So he was a big boxing fan. So never let me say it. And I remember he would make appearances at different boxing matches. I just saw a picture that Simon Brown put up that Marion Barry was there the night Brown fought Tyrone Trice here at the D.C. Armory. First boxing title fight I ever covered. And he was there for that. So Marion Barry was a big boxing fan. So to have him there was not that strange. Because again, he was a big boxing fan. But this was right after I believe it was right after he was convicted of drug possession and sent to jail for a little while. So he was just coming back, kind of making his redemption tour. And this was one of the first places for the redemption tour. So he would get to be the ring announcer. And he announced John Carlo as Juan Carlos. Oh, boy. And then Mr. Leon Spinks. Not even Spinks. Spinks. And then he went into little Michael Buffer, and Bobby Jones tried to take the mic away from him because, as you may know, if you say Michael Buffer's catchphrase, you're open to a lawsuit. That's a true story, but that's another story for another time. So Sylvester Stevens is the referee for the bout. And, Charles James, my brother-in-law, was my color commentator that night. And so we're getting ready to kind of set up the bout again and just talk about the records for both times. And once again, we knew what Leon Spinks' record at that time was 25-15 with 14 knockouts. And so we knew that 25-15-3 with 14 knockouts. Again, we knew John Carlos' only loss was to somebody. We knew he was 11-1, 10 KOs. And remember, during the press conference before the fight, he didn't say a whole lot. He really didn't say a whole lot. So we're getting ready to set up the fight, and bell rings, and I'm looking down at my notes, trying just to talk about the fight a little bit, talk about the records and so forth. And when I look up, Leon Spinks is going down. Carlo hit Spinks with the first punch he threw, and down went Spinks. And he went down, sort of rolled around a little bit. Crowd, and there's a huge crowd at the convention center. It was at the Washington Convention Center. Huge crowd that night. And just people going crazy that particular time. So he went down, he got back up, and Carlo went to pummel him once again, and Spinks went down once again. He stayed a little bit, and by that time, Leon Spinks' manager, I can't remember his name, along with one of our great trainers and managers here in the Beltway, Cleveland Burgess, stood up at the ringside area, and they're waving the white flag. They're waving the white towel, trying to tell him, stop the fight. But Sylvester Stevens has his back to Burgess and Spinks' manager, and they never see it. He never sees it. So once again, Carlo would pummel Leon Spinks, and the fight would eventually be over. The fight took 1 minute and 9 seconds. That's how long it took for this bout. So that was weird. That was weird. It was just weird, and people were throwing stuff in the ring. People throwing trash in the ring, and I mean, on the one hand, I wasn't overly surprised at the time because Leon Spinks was definitely on the backside of his career. So we knew this could happen. I wasn't surprised by that. I remember after the fight, I interviewed John Carlo, and right at ringside, I interviewed John Carlo, and Carlo starts talking for some strange reason about Melvin Foster, who again had fought earlier on the card, and he wants Melvin Foster. He wanted to fight Melvin Foster, and okay, all right. I was like, okay, fine. I didn't understand why that was the case, but he wanted to fight Melvin Foster. But be as it may. Now, when the show aired, on Boxing Spotlight. The show aired all throughout the metro area, the Beltway Boxing area. And I saw the interview that my other broadcast partner, the Fight Dr. Leon Spinks, conducted with Leon Spinks. And Leon Spinks was making no sense. He couldn't understand half the words he said. And I could tell during the interview that Jerome was trying to get Leon to basically kind of say, I'm hanging it up. I'm done. Okay. Well, this was a pretty bad loss at that time. He did not have a loss. The last time he had a loss like that was when he lost to Tony Morrison back in May of 1988. He lost in the first round. But he hadn't had too many losses like that to anybody he had really no loss to anybody with any kind of major record. Again, 11-1's not bad, but but still, we had no idea who John Carlo was. But Leon was saying he just got started. I'm not going to give up. He just got started. And you just look at the amazement on Jerome's face. Excuse me. When he said that, he tried to be as professional as he possibly could and just say he's a true competitor. It was just great. It was wonderful. It was hilarious. It really was. So that was the night. We all thought Leon should retire and so forth. We didn't know how good John Carlo really was. So now we get to the aftermath of this night. Positively for Leon Spinks, he would actually win his next bout. He won an 8-round unanimous decision over Ray Kipping on June 19th, 1995 in St. Louis, Missouri, which is his hometown. And he also loses his last bout in his hometown in December of 1995, December 4th, 1995, an 8-round unanimous decision to Fred Haupt. So, Leon actually did win a bout after the loss to Carlo, which was amazing in and of itself. Now, on the Carlo side, this is where it gets really strange here. Remember I told you that Carlo's announced record was 11-1, 10 KOs. And I also said that every now and then they could kind of stretch the truth and lie about different records. Well, apparently they lied about John Carlo's record. John Carlo that night on October 22nd, 1994 was actually making his professional debut. And that makes Leon Spinks the only professional boxer, former world heavyweight champion, to lose to a boxer making his professional debut. That was the strangest aftermath of this whole situation. Okay? Now, John Carlo, actually, to his credit, did have a pretty good record as a pro. He was 14-2, 12 KOs. He never fought Melvin Foster. That never happened. But there was one particular bout that got him in a little bit of trouble. It was on March 7th, 1997 at Westbury Music Fair in New York. He lost second round knockout to Richie Milito. Heavyweight. He was undefeated at the time. Now, the word was that John Carlo was accused of throwing a fight against Richie Milito. He might have thrown the bout. It was his first pro loss. And he might have thrown that bout. Now, another boxer in the boxing scene also lost a knockout to Richie Milito. His name was Thomas Top Dog Williams Sr. Now, Carlo managed to somehow escape a little bit of jail time. He didn't get a lot of jail time for that, if he got any. Thomas Williams did. He spent some time in jail after that. And it's all because of a very crooked promoter at the time. I don't remember his name, but it was a very crooked promoter who took advantage of Thomas Williams, and he definitely got him to throw fights. And that's what happened. So Carlo took about a 5-year hiatus before fighting again in April of 2002. And then took 3 more years off before his last 2 bouts. He lost his last bout to J.D. Chapman, who was undefeated, on November 26, 2005. So again, his record 14-2 with 12 KOs. So this was the night that just continued to grow. Continued to grow and grow in history, and is truly one of the strangest nights that I've ever spent in the Beltway boxing scene. And again, boxing in general is, as my brother-in-law Charles James says, the theater of the unexpected. Well, this was truly unexpected. I mean, it was unexpected to this case that we knew that Leon Spinks wasn't the fight he once was, but we never expected this. And what has happened afterwards has gotten stranger and stranger as the years go on. So that's my look back at October 22nd, 1994, the night Leon Spinks came to town. A really, really bizarre night in the history of Beltway boxing. And of course, our next podcast, we're going to take a look at what Boxing Spotlight was all about for me and what exactly it was. Okay? Now, before we get out of here, as you know, I'm a wrestling fan, long-time wrestling fan, but I got to call foul on what has just transpired in Florida. Now, not to disparage Florida in any way, but I've talked to Floridians. I have a good friend who's from Florida on my job, and he says people are weird down there and things are weird down there. And I once heard the comedian John Oliver said when Mickey Mouse is waving to people from Disney World, he's saying, "Please get me out of here." Okay, so I don't know. But as you know, with this coronavirus, this COVID-19, there are many places that we cannot go anymore. We cannot go into restaurants. We cannot go into movie theaters. We cannot go into concert halls and sporting arenas and so forth. We can't do that anymore, not at this time. There are certain places that are deemed essential: grocery stores, pharmacies, gas stations, hospitals, of course, but, grocery stores, pharmacies, these places are deemed essential. In other words, they stay open. They may not do as much as they used to, and they definitely some rules as you go to the stores, but they're deemed essential because every now and then you need to go to the pharmacy and get your medicine. You need to get some food, okay? But in Florida, for some strange reason, World Wrestling Entertainment is deemed essential. Thereby, they're doing their live shows, not in front of an audience. There's no audience there. But they're doing live shows like Raw and SmackDown and NXT. And you got to wonder why. Until you find out the connection between the state of Florida, the McMahon family, and our president, Donald Trump. Now, the history between the Trumps and the McMahons goes back a few years. President Trump hosted WrestleManias 4 and 5, the only WrestleManias that were held in back-to-back years at the same location, at the Trump Taj Mahal Casino in Atlantic City, New Jersey. WrestleMania 4 was, of course, the WWF Heavyweight Tournament, which was eventually won by Randy Macho Man Savage over Ted DiBiase, and it solidified the relationship between Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan as the Mega Powers. Okay, that was WrestleMania 4. WrestleMania 5, by that time, the Mega Powers had exploded, and Randy Savage faced Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 5 from Taj Mahal, and Hogan would win back the title. Later on in WrestleMania history, Trump himself would participate in a billionaire versus billionaire event where each billionaire had their own wrestler, and whoever won, the loser would get his head shaved, and Vince McMahon got his head shaved. Donald Trump is in the WWE Hall of Fame, and so he has a large connection with the McMahon family, and in the early stages of President Trump's administration, Linda McMahon, Vince McMahon's wife, was the head of the Small Business Administration. Now, she's no longer that. But what she is the head of a PAC, a pro-Trump political action committee, that just gave $20 million to the state of Florida, to Republican campaign in Florida. The governor of Florida is Ron DeSantis. He is a Republican. And that may have been why and how WWE was deemed essential. It makes no sense. And I'm a wrestling fan. I'm going to be the first to tell you that it makes absolutely no sense that WWE is deemed essential. Now, their competitors, AEW, All Elite Wrestling, after their tape shows that they've done, they will go dark in May. They will not do any shows in May, and they have done shows in Florida themselves. But I think they understand what the situation is. We're not in a position right now to go to any wrestling shows. In fact, WrestleMania 36 was done over a 2-day period, and it had no audience in sight. So we know that we're not ready for that. And I really kind of criticize WWE. And WWE's point of view is because of what's going on, because of the virus and how it's affecting people all over the world, WWE can give us some entertainment, World Wrestling Entertainment, and give us a way to forget about what's going on for at least an hour or two. And I respect that. I understand that. But truthfully, I just don't think it's the right time. Just like every other sport event has shut down, from the Olympics, from the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, the XFL went into bankruptcy. That's another Vince McMahon product. They went into bankruptcy behind this shutdown. There will be no Tour de France until sometime in August. There's no Wimbledon, no French Open, no Indy 500 until late. I mean, it's just so much that has been shut down because of the virus. I just don't understand how WWE gets to be involved with that. And as I've talked to you about this, they have announced, WWE has announced furloughs, including reducing executive salaries, cutting child expenses, and pausing construction on a new headquarters. That's coming from ESPN about the WWE. So again, you just got to wonder why. Now, granted, they don't have to do a lot of traveling, which is a good thing. The wrestlers don't have to do a lot of traveling. But it just makes very little sense on the surface as to why World Wrestling Entertainment is still having live shows, even without an audience at this time, given what's going on right now. So that's just my take on that. No question about that. Beltway Boxing News and Notes on the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network, brought to you by Real Time Pain Relief. From boxers to ballerinas. Come on, Courtney. From shoulder pain, muscle strain, everything in between, Boxing on Beltway recommends Real Time Pain Relief, the natural plant-based, safe, fast, and effective ointment. Once again, you go to freepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of Real Time Pain Relief. You get a free $10 tube of Real Time Pain Relief, the official pain relief of the 2020 Daytona 500. Rub it on. The pain is gone in real time. Thank you very much. Also by DeborahSpears.com. Great weight loss tips, great jewelry, great training methods. All Deborah, DEBRA Spears.com. I'm Gary Digital Williams. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for spending time with us and listening to the legend of the night Leon Spinks came to town. Thank you for joining us, and always remember, keep supporting best boxing in the world, the boxing along the Beltway. Thanks for listening. Take care.